With Hephaestus, we have another god that might not be the most popular one. However, as the blacksmith of Mount Olympus, he was the most crafty one and basically responsible for any useful invention or advice for any gods or mortals alike. For example, he invented Helios' chariot, Zeus' thunderbolts, or even Aphrodite's belt that enhanced her charm, even though she already had enough of that. So one way to look at Hephaestus in terms of our inner world is he represents the artist, the creator inside of us. When we honor our skill to perfection and are able to create something out of that. Another really interesting part about his myth is his marriage to Aphrodite, the goddess of love. And as you will see, those two didn't really match, they were quite opposites. Nevertheless, the marriage itself is so significant and relevant and basically one of the major points of his myth. Hello and welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name is Jada. In this series, we're diving into the different archetypes of Greek mythology as a tool of self-discovery and better understanding ourselves. So if you haven't watched the introduction video, I'm gonna link it up above and down below. It will give you a better understanding on what this series is about. Also, I'm going to link the playlist of the other gods in the description box as well, so you can watch those too if you want. Otherwise, we're going to look at the myth of Hephaestus and what he basically represents for ourselves. The probably two most dominant parts of his myth is that of his birth and therefore his relationship with his mother Hera and his marriage to Aphrodite, the goddess of love, who was very, very different from himself. In terms of his birth, one of the versions says that Hera was really upset about Zeus giving birth to Athena on his own, and in an act of revenge or rage, she basically wanted to do the same and prove that she could be as good as Zeus. So out of that endeavor, basically Hephaestus was born. However, the moment he was born and his mother laid eyes on him, she was not pleased because he was not very pleasing to the eyes, he didn't seem to have any talents, and she basically was disappointed in him. Because of that, she grabbed Hephaestus and threw him off Mount Olympus. Because of the fall and the impact when he basically slammed onto the ground, Hephaestus became crippled as well. So first of all, he wasn't very beautiful to begin with, but now because of that incident, he was also physically lame. Despite that, at the same time, he was really lucky because he had someone take him in. Now there are again different versions. Some say he was raised by nymphs, other ones say that he was raised by some sea goddesses. But the main concept remains the same, and that is that he was raised by someone else. He received nurture from someone who wasn't his own biological parent. Through that nurturing, he was able to discover his talents and his passions and hone them to an incredible high level and basically become the best at what he does. Later on, Hera became aware of how good he is, like the incredible things that he was able to create, and because of that was suddenly very pleased with him and decided to bring him back to Mount Olympus. Because all of a sudden she had something to show off, like this was her son. Despite the nurturing that Hephaestus received from the nymphs or goddesses, whoever raised him, he always remained very introverted and not very sociable. This part of his myth illustrates a few different points. On one side, the rejection that he received from his own mother can stand representative of how we can end up emotionally or even physically crippled by the expectations of our parents, because they're like, oh, you gotta do this, you gotta achieve like that. And those expectations can be in terms of achievements, but also in terms of luck, depending on what is important to that parent. So it really highlights the impact that our parents have on us. On the other hand, it really beautifully shows that we can also receive nurturing from someone who is not our biological parent and still grow and evolve from that as well. So just like him, we can receive nurturing from a friend, from family, from a mentor, anyone that is not our direct caregiver, and still grow and bloom from that. So his journey shows us that rejection and hardships do not define us, but it's rather what we do with those challenges that decide who we become or who we are able to become. Now, another really intriguing part about his myth is his marriage to Aphrodite, and those two couldn't be more opposite. Due to his upbringing, Hephaestus was very introverted, he wasn't very handsome or attractive, he wasn't very sociable, compared to Aphrodite, who was all bubbly, all about love, all about passion, all about, being in the moment and indulging in the moment. They were literally opposite. And this is also why Aphrodite was constantly unfaithful to Hephaestus. And yes, he was upset about it, but at the same time, he didn't really do about it, in the sense he wasn't able to give Aphrodite what she really needed. And if you're wondering how the heck did he get Aphrodite as his wife, the simple answer would be trickery, or maybe, being very crafty. So he was very fed up with his mother Hera for his rejection and even the way she treated him in general, and decided to trap her on a golden throne. So he built that beautiful golden throne and gifted it to his mother. And the moment that Hera sat down on it, she wasn't able to get out of it again. So she was basically trapped. Now all the gods tried to free her, and Hephaestus basically refused to do so, to the point where basically everybody begged him, please let her go. The only way that he would agree to that was like, okay, I'm gonna do it, but only if I get Aphrodite as my wife. And basically this is how it happened. What this part of the myth really highlights is his desire for beauty, like having that desire for Aphrodite, who was so different from him. Basically being able to get her, but then not being able to maintain that relationship. So on one side, it explores the tension between desire and compatibility. So he really desired Aphrodite, but he wasn't compatible for her or with her whatsoever. So on one side, he really represents the part in ourselves that longs for that beauty, for that indulgence in life and being able to enjoy the pleasures of life, which is represented by Aphrodite. On the other hand, he shows us that we might lack those skills, or that we might have difficulties or struggles in aligning those desires with reality. So, bringing the idea into the physical world, which is also really interesting considering the fact that he is the blacksmith, that in terms of his craftsmanship, he was able to envision incredible tools or devices and bring those to reality. But his vision or desire for the social aspect of life, he kind of failed. He wasn't able to bring that into life as he wished to. So he kind of also shows us that being like a genius in one area of your life doesn't mean that you have the same level of skill in another area of your life. So he also shows this balance that can happen if you only focus on one area of your life and ignore another one, or you just hone certain skills while ignoring other ones. Therefore, a balanced Hephaestus is someone who finds joy in creating and innovating and honing his skills. It's about mastering your craft while at the same time maintaining a well-rounded life. So at his best, he's able to balance his work with his relationships and also his self-care. An overactive Hephaestus is someone who kind of loses himself in work, and therefore his social circle or his relationships start to suffer, to the point where he becomes totally disconnected from them. So I just want you to think of someone who is locked up in his home or in his office, wherever it is, and he loses himself in work, where he's like, writing a book for a week in a row and forgets to shower and eat, and his phone doesn't have any battery and no one can reach him anymore. This would be like the extreme if Hephaestus is way overactive. We literally neglect every other part of ourselves. Another struggle that we might face is having challenges to connect to other ones emotionally or socially, because we are so introverted and we never honed that skill. A suppressed Hephaestus, on the other hand, might be someone who is struggling to tap into his or her creativity, who has a hard time to follow through and bring a project to end. It could also be someone who avoids developing his skills or using his skills or talents, but also someone who feels uninspired and doesn't have a real passion. Another way to look at this is in terms of hobbies. If you don't have a single hobby, that might be an indication that Hephaestus might be a little too suppressed. So it doesn't have to become your life's work, but just having that thing that you just really enjoy doing. One thing to keep in mind is that he's not about inspiration, he's about craftsmanship, about that ability to hone a skill to absolute perfection just because we want to. So what can you do if the Hephaestus inside of you is out of balance? If he's overactive, meaning you're losing yourself in your project and totally lose connection to the other parts of your life, it's about learning to take breaks and making time for the relationships in your life and even for the relationship with yourself. So while it might be easy for you to, come home and start working on your project or indulge in your hobby, it could be that you need to actively decide, what, this afternoon I'm gonna block off, I'm not gonna do anything of that. And I'm just going to spend time with my loved ones, or I'm going to take time for myself and do the things that I have been neglecting. Another thing could be to create balance in terms of honing your skills. If you have been overly focused on, let's say, a skill like writing a book that is very antisocial, so to say, it's about learning to develop the skills in the other areas of your life so you can create balance and a well-rounded life. So it's about reflecting, okay, do I maybe need to focus more on the communication in my intimate relationship? Is that a skill that I am lacking? So it's really about looking which skills are you missing that you actually need for a fully fulfilling life. A suppressed Hephaestus on the other side is all about learning to finish a project. It's about, setting yourself those timeline and be like, I'm not going to be distracted. I'm going to turn off my phone. I'm going to do whatever I have to really focus on that project, or really focusing on practicing that skill. It could be something like committing to writing that book and blocking out the time, but it can also be something like locking in those practice time. If you're a singer, that you're like, okay, this is the time where I'm going to practice and hone my skill. So it's really about dedicating yourself to that skill and follow through no matter what. If on the other hand you're like, well, I don't really have a passion or a hobby, or I don't really have anything, it's about starting to explore him. And this should be happening with a very open mind, as in, if you're like, oh, I want to try out singing, just go there without expectations. So just as Hephaestus had his expectations in terms of Aphrodite and his relationship with her, you shouldn't be having that with your passions. It's like, just start trying out and see if it's actually compatible. So take that singing lesson and see if it really does spark your fire, and just keep exploring until you eventually find something that really piques your interest. So Hephaestus really is that creator inside of us, that we create for the pure joy of creation. It's not about indulging it in like because you enjoy the experience. This will be more Aphrodite, but really about enjoying the act of creation. So let me know how you feel about Hephaestus. Is it well balanced in your life? So don't forget to watch the other gods as well. The playlist is in the description box down below. Otherwise, this is it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.